Good morning, Room 219, and welcome back. We are going to continue on our read aloud of Esperanza Rising, so please go get your copy of your book. And we're going to read chapter 8 together right now, okay? Así que hit pause if you need to for you to get your book. If you're ready to continue, then you can hit play. You need to turn to page 139 of the chapter, okay? All right. So remember, you are going to be reading and annotating, which means you can write in these books. These are for you to keep. Así que pueden escribir en el libro porque es tuyo para que quedarte con your notes that will help you with the questions that you're going to answer today. Así que para escribir notas para ayudarlos en contestar sus preguntas de hoy. Okay? So please be ready to write and listen and follow along as I read the chapter, okay? As they walked to the bus stop, Isabel recited a list of concerns to Esperanza, sounding exactly as Josefina and Mama had sounded earlier that morning. Put Pepe down for the nap first, and when he falls asleep, put Lupe down. Otherwise, they will play and never go to sleep, and Lupe will not eat bananas. So, Isabel is going where now? She's going to school, which means Esperanza is now going to be with the babies all by herself. Big moment for her, right? Okay. I know, said Esperanza, repositioning Pepe on her hip. Isabel handed her Lupe and climbed the steps of the yellow bus. She found a seat and waved from the window. Esperanza wondered who was more worried, she or Isabel. Who do you think is more worried, Esperanza or Isabel? I think it might be Isabel. Because, those are her baby brother and sister. She might be a little more scared. But then again, Esperanza's going to be living through it. I don't know. Maybe it's a tie. What do you guys think? Esperanza struggled to carry both babies back to the cabin. Thank goodness Isabel had already helped her feed and dress them. She settled them on a blanket on the floor with some tin cups and wood blocks. Then put the beans into a big pot on the stove. Hortensia had prepared them earlier with a big onion and a few cloves of garlic, and instructed Esperanza to stir them occasionally and let them cook on low heat, adding more water throughout the day. How many of you, that's how your parents cook beans at home? Or almost the same. That's how I cook it. She stirred the beans and watched Lupe and Pepe play. I wish Abuelita could see me, she thought. She would be proud. Later, Esperanza looked for something to feed the babies for lunch. A bowl of ripe plums sat on the table. They should be soft enough to eat, she thought. She took several, removed the pit, and mashed them with a fork. Both babies loved them. Reaching for more after each spoonful, Esperanza mashed another 3 plums, and they gobbled every bite. So how many plums did they eat? They ate 10 in between those 2 babies. She let them have their fill until they started fussing and reaching for their bottles of milk. Enough of lunch, said Esperanza, cleaning their faces and gratefully thinking that it would soon be nap time. She slowly changed their wet diapers, remembering all of Josefina and Isabel's instructions. She put Pepe down first with his bottle, as directed, and when he fell asleep, she put Lupe down next to him. Esperanza lay down too, wondering why was she so tired, and she dozed. So not only did the babies take a nap, who else took a nap? Yep, Esperanza. Oh, it's gonna get interesting. She woke up to Lupe's whimpering and an atrocious smell. Brown liquid leaked from her diaper. What do you think that brown liquid is, guys? So let's cover that word atrocious smell. Atrocious is a great word. So based on our context clues, We know what the brown liquid is. So what would be a good synonym to describe the smell from that? Yeah, awful, horrible, terrible. Some of you may say toxic. All right, so atrocious, awful, terrible. Go ahead and annotate that word if you don't know what it means, or just to make sure you remember it for yourself. So Lupe is not feeling good. Let's continue and find out what happens next. Esperanza picked her up and carried her out of the room so she wouldn't wake Pepe. She changed her into a dry diaper and rolled the soiled one into a ball and put it by the door until she could take it to the toilets. When she put Lupe back down, Pepe was sitting up in the bed, in the same condition. She repeated the diaper changing. With both babies clean, she left them in the bed and dashed to the toilets to rinse the diapers. Then she ran back to the cabin. A different smell greeted her. The beans! She had forgotten to add more water. When she checked the pot, they appeared to be scorched only on the bottom. So she poured in water and stirred them. The babies cried and never went back to sleep. Both had dirtied their diapers again. Yeah, it's gonna be a long afternoon. What do you guys think? And have you ever had anyone burn beans at your house before? Let me ask you, does the taste or the smell ever go away even if you add more water to the burned beans once it's been burned? In my experience, it doesn't. Se sabe quemado hasta que you throw it out or you eat it all. Uno de los dos. The babies cry. Oh, the wadded pile by the door grew. They must be ill, worried Esperanza. Did they have the flu, or was it something they ate? No one had been sick recently. What had they eaten today? Only their milk and the plums. The plums, she groaned. They must have been too hard on their stomachs. Yeah, babies, they can't eat everything adults can eat, can they? So, plums are one of them. What did Hortensia give her when she was a child and was sick? She tried to remember. Rice water! But how did she make it? Esperanza put a pot on the stove and added a cup of rice. She wasn't sure how much water to add, but she remembered that when rice didn't come out soft, Hortensia always said it needed more water. She added plenty and boiled the rice. Then she poured off the water and let it cool. She sat on the floor with the babies and fed them teaspoons of rice water all afternoon, counting the minutes until Isabel walked through the door. What happened? Said Isabel when she arrived and saw the pile of diapers by the door. They were sick from the plums, said Esperanza, nodding toward the plate still on the table where she had mashed them. Oh, Esperanza, they are too young for raw plums. Everyone knows that plums must be cooked for babies, said Isabel. Well, I'm not everyone, yelled Esperanza. She dropped her head and put her hands over her face. Pepe crawled into her lap, making happy, gurgling noises. She looked at Isabel, already sorry for screaming at her. I didn't mean to yell. It was a long day. I gave him some rice water, and they seem to be fine now. Sounding surprised, Isabel said, That was exactly the right thing to do. Esperanza nodded and let out a long sigh of relief. So, was it an easy first morning without Isabel? She had an interesting one. That night, no one mentioned the number of rinsed and wrung diapers in the washtub outside the door, or the beans that were obviously burnt, or the pan of rice in the sink. And no one questioned Esperanza when she said she was exhausted and wanted to go to bed early. Change of scenery, and let me fix my computer again. There we go. Oh, cap lock. Sorry, guys. One more moment. The grapes had been finished before the first fall rains and had been picked rápido, quickly. So now there were no Saturdays or Sundays in the week, just work days. The temperature was still over 90 each day. So as soon as Isabel's bus left for school, Esperanza took the babies to the back of the cabin. She fixed their bottles of milk and let them play while she made the beds. So first she has to give the babies their bottles, and she makes the beds. Then she followed Hortensia's instructions for starting dinner before turning to the laundry. So then she would have to start dinner and then do the laundry. She was amazed at the hot, dry air. Often, by the time she had filled the clothesline that were strung between the trees, she only had minutes to rest before the valley sun dried the clothes crisp and they were ready to fold. Irene and Melina came over after lunch, and Esperanza spread a blanket in the shade. Esperanza liked Melina's company. In some ways, she was a young girl, sometimes playing with Isabel and Silvia, or telling Esperanza gossip as if they were school friends. In other ways, she was grown up, with a nursing baby and a husband, and preferring to crochet with the older women in the evenings. "Do you crochet?" Melina asked. "I know a little, but only a few stitches," said Esperanza, remembering Abuelita's blanket of zigzag rows she had been too preoccupied to unpack. Melina laid her sleeping baby girl on the blanket and picked up her needlework. Irene cut apart a 50-pound flour sack that was printed with tiny flowers to use as fabric for dresses. So, remember, they're not exactly the richest people in the world, so they used whatever they could, and they could make some really pretty dresses. I've seen them before, out of those flour sacks, especially if they have little flowers. It could come out really nice, if she was good. Esperanza tickled Pepe and Lupe, and they laughed. "They adore you," said Melina. "They cried yesterday when I watched them for the few minutes it took you to sweep the platform." Oh, so she still has to sweep the platform every day. It was true. Both babies smiled when Esperanza walked into the room, always reaching for her, especially Pepe. Lupe was good-natured and less demanding, but Esperanza learned to watch her closely, as she often tried to wander away, so she's a daredevil. If she turned her back for a minute, Esperanza found herself frantically searching for Lupe. Esperanza rubbed Lupe and Pepe's backs, hoping they would go to sleep soon. But they were restless and wouldn't settle even though they had their bottles. The afternoon sky looked peculiar, tinged with yellow, and there was so much static in the air that the baby's soft hair stuck up. "Today is the day of the strike," said Melina. "I heard that they were going to walk out this morning." "Everyone was talking about it last night at the table," said Esperanza. "Alfonso said he was glad that everyone from our camp agreed to continue working. He is proud that we won't strike." So remember who was talking about a strike before? It was Marta. So the strike is going to happen today. Irene continued working on the flour sack and shaking her head. "So many Mexicans have the revolution still in their blood. I am sympathetic to those who are striking, and I am sympathetic to those who want to keep working. We all want the same things, to eat and feed our children." Esperanza nodded. She had decided that if she and Mama were going to get Abuelita here, they could not afford to strike. Not now. Not when they were so desperately needed money and the roof over their heads. She worried about what many were saying. If they didn't work, the people from Oklahoma would happily take their jobs. Then what would they do? A sudden blast of hot wind took the flour sack from Irene's hand and carried it to the fields. The baby sat up, frightened. Another hot blast hit them, but kept on. And when the edges of the blankets blew up, Lupe reached for Esperanza, whining. Irene stood up and pointed to the east. The sky was darkening with amber clouds, and several brown tumbleweeds bounced toward them. A royal of brown loomed over the mountains. Una tormenta de polvo! Dust storm, said Irene. Hurry! They picked up the babies and ran inside. Irene closed the door and began shutting the windows. What's happening? Asked Esperanza. A dust storm, like nothing you've ever seen before, said Melina. They are awful. So, why was the air and why was the sky so different today? There's a dust storm coming. And from what Melina said, it doesn't sound good. So, what do you think a dust storm has to include? I mean, it's right in the name, guys. It's a storm with dust. Okay, let's see what happens, okay? What about Mama and Hortensia and the others, and Alfonso and Miguel? They're all in the fields. They will send trucks for them, said Irene. Esperanza looked out the windows. Thousands of acres of tilled soil were becoming food for La Tormenta, and the sky was turning into a brown, swirling fog. Already she could not see the trees just a few yards away. Then the sound began, softly at first, like a gentle rain, then harder as the wind blasted the tiny grains of sand against the windows and metal roofs. The dirt showered against the cabin, pitting everything in its path. Get away from the window, warned Irene. The dirt and wind can break the glass. The finer dust seeped inside, and they tried to seal the door by stuffing rags under it. Esperanza couldn't stop thinking about the others. Isabel was at school. The teachers would take care of her. But Mama, Hortensia, and Josefina were in an open shed. She hoped the trucks would bring them soon. And the fields. She could only imagine. Alfonso, Juan, and Miguel, could they breathe? Irene, Melina, and Esperanza sat on the mattress in the front room, trying to calm the babies. There was no relief in the heat in a closed room, and soon the air was hazy. So remember, how warm was it that day? It was in the 90s. So imagine now all the windows and the doors have to be closed because of the dust. And it's 90 degrees outside. And there are 3 grown women and 3 babies in the room. How's it going to feel in there? Really hot and really nasty. Right? Irene dampened some towels so they could wipe the babies and their own faces. When they talked to one another, they tasted the earth. So even though all the windows and cracks have been closed, is this soil, the dirt still getting in? Yeah, just the really, el más finito, the finest powder, is getting in. How long does it last? Asked Esperanza. Sometimes hours, said Irene. The wind will stop first, and then the dust. Esperanza heard meowing from the door. What could that mean? Yeah, Isabel's kitten. She ran to it and pushed hard against the wind, opened it a crack. Isabel's kitten, Chiquita, darted in. There was no trace of her orange fur. The cat was powdered brown. The babies finally fell asleep, drowsy from the heavy air. Irene was right. The wind stopped, but the dust still swirled as if propelled by its own power. Irene and Melina left with Melina's baby, covered beneath a blanket, and rushed to their own cabin. Ooh, I hope theirs was closed. If not, they got a lot of cleaning to do. Esperanza waited nervously, pacing the room and worrying about the others. The school bus came first. Isabel burst into the cabin crying, Mi gata, Chiquita! Esperanza hugged her. She is fine, but very dirty and hiding under the bed. Are you all right? Yes, said Isabel. We got to sit in the cafeteria all afternoon and play games with erasers on our heads. But I was worried about Chiquita. The door opened again, and Mama walked into the cabin, her skin covered with an eerie brown chalkiness, and her hair dusted like the cat's fur. Oh, Mama! I am fine, mija, she said, coughing. Hortensia and Josefina followed, and Isabel put her hands on her cheeks in worried surprise. You look like raccoons, she said. All of their faces had circles of pink around their eyes, where they had squinted against the dust. The trucks could not find their way to the shed, so all we could do was sit and wait, said Hortensia. We hid behind some crates and buried our heads, but it did not help much. Josefina took the babies next door, and Mama and Hortensia began washing their arms in the sink, making muddy water. Mama continued to cough. What about Alfonso and Juan and Miguel? asked Esperanza. If the trucks could not get to us, they could not get to the fields. We will have to wait, said Hortensia, exchanging a worried look with Mama. A few hours later, Juan and Alfonso and Miguel arrived, their clothes stiff and brown, all of them coughing and clearing their throats every few minutes. Their faces were encrusted with dry dirt that they reminded Esperanza of cracked pottery. They took turns rinsing in the sink, the pile of brown clothes growing in the basket. When Esperanza looked outside, she could almost see the trees, but the dust was still thick in the air. Mama had a coughing spasm, and Hortensia tried to settle her with a glass of water. So Mama is having a coughing spasm. Do you know what a coughing spasm is? Yeah, that's when you can't stop coughing. It's like, and you can't stop. And Hortensia gave her water, but it still didn't help. That was a lot of dust. You gotta admit that. When the adults all finally sat down at the table, Esperanza asked, what happened with the strike? There was no strike, said Alfonso. We heard that they were all ready, and that there were hundreds of them. They had their signs, but the storm hit. The cotton is next to the ground, and the fields are now buried in dirt, and cannot be picked. Tomorrow they will have no jobs because of an act of God. So the strike, they were gonna not strike because they were gonna say we want more money and better living conditions. We won't pick your cotton, but because of the dust storm, what happened to the cotton? It got destroyed. So do they have work anymore? No, they do not. So, I mean, I feel bad for the strikers because I understand what they're talking about, but at the same time, they're sort of now like in a rock and a hard place. What will we do tomorrow? Asked Esperanza. The grapes are higher off the ground, said Alfonso. The trunks of the vine are covered, but the fruit was not affected. The grapes are ready and cannot wait. So mañana we will go back to work. The next morning the sky was blue and calm, and the dust had left the air. It had settled on the world, covering everything in like a suede blanket. Everyone who lived in camp shook out the powdery soil, went back to work, and came home again as if nothing had happened. So, do you all know what suede means? Okay, let's talk about suede for a minute. Suede is a type of material. Well, think of it this way. Everything was covered in a suede blanket. So, it was covered in dust, right? So, what color do you think suede is? Yeah, it's brown. So, the way they're using suede is as a color. So suede is just brown. And suede is like a type of leather that you can see on your shoes. Your shoes can be made out of suede. Jackets can be made out of suede. It's a lot of different materials. But if I had to give you a suede color, this is what I had handy. This is about a suede color right here. Okay? And yeah, that looks like the dust is all over everything. So they cleaned up. And they went on their lives. All right. In a week, they finished cutting the grapes. Then, while they finished packing the grapes, they were already talking about preparing for potatoes. The camp routine repeated itself like a regimented rows in the fields. Very little seemed to change, thought Esperanza, except the needs of the earth and Mama. Mama has changed, because after the storm, she never stopped coughing. Squiggly line. Mama, you're so pale, said Esperanza. Mama carefully walked into the cabin as if she were trying to keep her balance and slumped into a chair in the kitchen. Hortensia was bustling behind her. I'm going to make her chicken soup with lots of garlic. She had to sit down at work today because she felt faint. But it's no wonder because she is not eating. Look at her! She has lost weight. She has not been herself since the storm, and that was a month ago. I think she should go to the doctor. Mama, listen to her, pleaded Esperanza. Mama looked at her weakly. I'm fine, just tired. I'm not used to the work, and I've told you, doctors are very expensive. So why do you think Mama doesn't want to see the doctor? Do you think it's because she's really just tired? Or is she worried about how much it's going to cost? I think she's worried about the cost as well. I feel bad that she has to think that way. Because it shouldn't be that way. Irene and Melina are coming over after dinner to crochet, said Esperanza. She thought that would cheer Mama. You sit with them, said Mama. I'm going to lie down until the soup is ready, because I have a headache. Then after dinner, I'll go straight to bed and get a good rest. I'll be fine. She coughed, got up, and slowly walked from the room. Hortensia looked at Esperanza, shaking her head. A few hours later, Esperanza stood over Mama. Your soup is ready, Mama. But she didn't move. Mama, dinner, said Esperanza, reaching her arm for her arm and gently shaking her. Mama's arm was burning. Her cheeks were flushed red, and she wasn't waking. Esperanza felt panic squeezing her, and she screamed, Hortensia! Oh, goodness, my laptop. Just when it was getting good. Change of scenery. The doctor came in. He was American, light and blonde, but he spoke perfect Spanish. He looks very young to be a doctor, said Hortensia. He has come to the camp before, and people trust him, said Irene. And there are not many doctors who will come out here. Alfonso, Juan, and Miguel sat in the front steps, waiting. Isabel sat on the mattress, her eyes worried. Esperanza could not sit still. She paced near the bedroom door, trying to hear what was going on inside. When the doctor finally came out, he looked grim. He walked over to the table where all the women sat. Esperanza followed him. The doctor signaled for the men and waited until everyone was inside. She has valley fever. What does that mean? Asked Esperanza. So what does Mama have? She got something that's called valley fever. So let's find out what is valley fever. It's a disease of the lungs that is caused by dust spores. Sometimes when people move into this area and aren't used to the air here, the dust spores get into their lungs and cause an infection. So that's what it is. But we were all in the dust storm, said Alfonso. When you live in this valley, everyone inhales the dust spores at one time or another. Most of the time, the body can overcome the infection. Some people will have no symptoms at all. Some will feel like they have a flu for a few days. And others, for whatever reason, cannot fight the infection and get very sick. How sick? Asked Hortensia. Esperanza sat down. She may have a fever on and off for weeks, but you must try to keep it down. She will cough and have headaches and joint aches. She might get a rash. Can we catch it from her? The babies? Asked Josefina. No, said the doctor. It isn't contagious, and the babies and young children are probably had a mild form of it already, without you even knowing it. Once the body fights off the infection, it doesn't get it again. For those who lived here the most of their lives, they are naturally immunized. Ooh, I like that word, immunized. Let's talk about that one. Immunized. So if you've lived in the valley long enough, What does it mean if you are immunized to the valley fever? What does it mean to be immune? Any ideas? Immunized means that you can't get sick from it. And if you spent most of your life in the valley and you've breathed in those spores, would your body have developed a defense against it? Yes. So immunized means to not be able to, unable to get sick from something. So if you want to copy this into your annotations, go ahead. It will help you later on. Okay. Hit pause if you need to keep copying. But I'm going to keep going. It is hardest on adults who move here and are not accustomed to the agricultural dust. How long until she is well? Asked Esperanza. The doctor's face looked tired. He ran his hands through his short blonde hair. There are some medicines she can take, but even then, if she survives, it may take 6 months for her to get her full strength back. Esperanza felt Alfonso behind her, putting his hands on her shoulders. She felt the blood drain from her face. She wanted to tell the doctor that she could not lose Mama too, that she had already lost Papa and that Abuelita was too far away. Her voice strangled with fear. All she could do was whisper the doctor's uncertain words. If she survives. And that's where we'll stop for today. So go ahead and work on your comprehension questions today. Please use the story, use the read aloud to help you. And if you have any questions, you can always message me on the Google Classroom. All right, until I see you later today for our math lesson. All right? Bye, 219.